There are 5 running backs that are going in fantasy football drafts at their absolute floor. They are absolutely bust-proof, and we're going to dig into it. So the first guy, going to start right off the bat, not going to waste your time. Derrick Henry, I don't understand the hate whatsoever. There is no floor for Derrick Henry, only a super large ceiling. And I got a ton of shit to back this up. So let's see. Let me find it real quick. All right, the first thing that I want to talk about. Let's look at his finishes, okay? Last season, in his so-called washed-up year, he was the RB8. The year before, RB4, then RB22 when he missed half the season, but he was the RB1 in fantasy points per game before getting hurt. RB3 the year before, RB4 the year before. All right, it's Derrick Henry. Now, he's entering his 30-year-old season. But I'm not worried. He was top 10 in a lot of metrics last year. I will pop it up on the screen. You can look at the Player Profiler website. Beautiful website for metrics like this. Honestly, for anything in fantasy football, it's a great website. He's not washed up, fellas. He's not washed up. Let's look at his touchdowns, right? We'll pop it back up. Last season he had 12. The year before, 13. The year before, 10 in only 8 games. Then 17, then 16, then 12. 10 plus touchdowns in each of the past 6 seasons, and you could say 12 plus when he plays a full season. Gus Edwards had 13 rushing touchdowns last year. If you don't think that Derrick Henry is going to have double-digit touchdowns, you should not be playing fantasy football. Not only did the Ravens give Gus Edwards 20 plus carries inside the 5, they ran the ball 31.5 times per game, number 1 in the NFL. Everyone likes to say, oh my God, but like Lamar Jackson, like he's going to take all the carries. Lamar averaged 7.5 attempts last season. That leaves 24 carries up for grabs on a per game basis. Do you seriously think that is not enough for Derrick Henry to return value at RB11 on some platforms, RB9? He's my RB7. I don't understand that a single bit. Anyway, a lot of people also hate rushing quarterbacks for running backs. Like, oh, he's going to take all the work. He's going to take the touchdowns. I think more often than not, it's beneficial because they spike their efficiency. How are you going to worry about Derrick Henry when you got to worry about Lamar Jackson? Now, this is the other thing, and this is probably my favorite thing about Derrick Henry. If you look at the splits, and I'll pop it up on the screen, from fantasy points per game when his team is winning or when his team is losing. Like, there's a reason he had like a 54% snap rate last season, because they were always losing. They had to take him out and give Tajay Spears the receiving work. Happens. In wins over the past 6 seasons, Derrick Henry averages 22.5 fantasy points per game and then losses 12.3 fantasy points per game. Now, the reason I love that is because Baltimore led on 62% of their offensive plays last season, which was number 1 in the NFL. Tennessee was bottom 12 at 28%. I do not see any dud weeks coming for Derrick Henry in 2023. I could legitimately see 1,200 plus yards and 15 plus touchdowns. You're not going to get many of those 20 carries for 62 yards and no touchdowns or catches this season. They're going to be scoring. Derrick Henry's going to be scoring. He's not going to be taken out of the game for his receiving down running back. Which, by the way, I'll pop another thing up. Offensive coordinator Todd Monken has talked about, check out Coach Speak Index, great account on Twitter. You can hear how coaches talk about their players. And they also have like ratings on how trustworthy these coaches are based on their past for fantasy football. It's awesome. Derrick Henry is getting hyped up by Todd Monken, saying that they want to get him the ball out in space, throw him some screens. He's perfectly capable as a pass catcher that Tennessee just never used him as. There's no fucking ceiling for this guy. Number 2, James Cook. Now this is, honestly, I didn't even realize this until I dug super deep into it. Let's just start off with the new offensive coordinator change that happened in Week 11 with Buffalo for James Cook. Joe Brady came in as offensive coordinator, and his number one thing was get James Cook the football. From week 11 on, when Joe Brady came in, James Cook averaged 16.7 fantasy points per game, 20 opportunities per game, 109 yards per game, 0.8 touchdowns per game, and his statistics were on pace for 1,700 yards and 9 touchdowns with Joe Brady. We saw how slow James Cook started the season, but he went fucking nuclear with Joe Brady. And one thing that I want to point out, he was on pace for 68 receptions last season in this span with Joe Brady from week 11 on. That would have been third among running backs behind only Breece Hall and Alvin Kamara. And another thing, I don't think anybody realized, I truly didn't realize until today, this dude was 6th in scrimmage yards in the entire NFL last season and 3rd among running backs, behind Christian McCaffrey and Breece Hall. This dude scores 5 more touchdowns this season. This could be a top 5 running back. Legitimately. He scored 2 rushing touchdowns last year. Now, everyone's problem with James Cook is, Ray Davis is going to come in, take all the rushing touchdowns, and Josh Allen, he gets 6 to 8 touchdowns a season. Here's what I'll say about that. Number one, James Cook getting 2 rushing touchdowns, but being 3rd among running backs in scrimmage yards, with an OC that loves him, I would be very surprised if that number stayed at 2, even if it just goes up to 4 or 5, which is over-under on Underdog is 4.5. So that's kind of what we're expecting. Then he could see a big jump. But even if not, if he stays at 2 rushing touchdowns, which, by the way, he had 4 receiving touchdowns, so 6 total touchdowns. If he stays at 2 rushing touchdowns, he was still the overall running back 12 last season, and that is where he's being drafted, the running back 13. So fine, just give him all the scrimmage yards and don't give him the touchdowns, and he's going to be a top 15 running back with ease. You give him the touchdowns, he's got a ton of upside. This guy cannot be a bust. And I also will throw in that Josh Allen had 15 rushing touchdowns. If you look at his game log before that, it's 6, 7, 8, 7, 8, something like that. I would expect some regression there from Josh Allen after doubling his previous season high. And one more thing that I would like to say, everyone likes to talk about Stephon Diggs being gone, Gabe Davis being gone. Who's gonna get all these receptions? Dalton Kincaid, Curtis Samuel, is it Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir? Is it fucking Chase Claypool is getting hype? How about James Cook? How about get your running back the ball more? A dude that was on pace to be 3rd in running back receptions with this offensive coordinator, he is the guy that's going to get more receptions. He's not going to be their leading receiver, but I'm saying nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. Let's get into the 3rd guy, and I already talked about this guy a couple of videos ago for a bounce back guy, but not only is he a bounce back, he is an extremely safe floor. There's no fucking way he busts. And it's Najee Harris. Oh, you already hate me. I know you already hate me. Everybody hates Najee Harris. Everybody wants some Jaylen Warren. Fine, leave me some more Najee Harris, but let's fucking talk about it. So Najee Harris, let's take a look at his past 3 seasons. I'll pop it up right here. What do you see? Your takeaway from this should be consistency. 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns and 0 games missed. Every single season. RB3, RB14, and RB23. Yet he's being drafted at about the RB20 right now. Why? My best guess is everyone hates Arthur Smith. Oh, Arthur Smith, he ruins fantasy running backs. He's disgusting. He ruined Bijan Robinson. Najee's going to be so bad. That is one of the most ignorant, uneducated, and I don't mean to put myself up on a pedestal here. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you got to, dig deeper into it rather than just hear, Arthur Smith sucks. Oh, man, okay, he's going to be bad. Don't draft Najee. Arthur Smith is great for fantasy running backs, guys. Let's take a look at his stats. 2019 and 2020, He ran the ball the 10th most in the NFL and the second most in the NFL, with Derrick Henry obviously making him a top 10 running back. Then he became the Falcons head coach. 2021, he was 28th in run rate, but his RB1 was Cordero Patterson, so what are you going to do about that? 2022, first in rushing attempts per game, with Tyler Algier as the RB1, and last season ran the ball third most in the NFL with Bijan at RB1. Let me just say this about the Arthur Smith narrative. He gives Jonnu Smith one rushing touchdown and Cordero a rushing touchdown, and everyone's thinks he ruined Bijan Robinson. The reason everyone thinks he ruined Bijan is because Bijan was supposed to be the RB2 in his rookie season in fantasy football. So just because the fantasy community overprojected Bijan Robinson, he still finished as a top 10 running back, guys. Sure, he didn't hit that top 3 ceiling, but he was still an RB1 in fantasy football. Now let's talk about how much better the Steelers' offense got. They upgraded from Kenny Pickett to Justin Fields / Russell Wilson, and they bolstered up their offensive line. Drafted Troy Fautanu, however you say that, in the first round of the NFL draft. Najee also finished with 7 RB13 or better finishes in the last 12 games of 2023. Down the stretch, he was a dog. He is the bruiser. He is the guy that's going to benefit. He's the guy that's going to score these rushing touchdowns, not Jaylen Warren, who only has 5 rushing touchdowns in his NFL career. Or, I don't know how long his career is, but the past 2 seasons, he's only scored 5. So, another thing is the Steelers were dead last in touchdowns scored last season. 31 total touchdowns, 28th in points per game. With an improved offense and a run-heavy offensive coordinator new to the team, man, I'd be surprised if they scored that little amount. You can't get worse than how bad they were last season. So that is why he's being drafted at his floor, completely safe RB2 for your fantasy football team. I'm jumping all over him because I also think he's got the ceiling. The next guy is Isaiah Pacheco. Extremely high ceiling, extremely high floor. Absolutely bust-proof. Draft him in every single league that you can. So last season, without Jerick McKinnon, who is now gone, leaving a wide-open 20 catches on the season, he averaged 21.1 fantasy points per game, which was good for third in the NFL. He only played 14 games, but if you pace out his season stats to 17 games, he was on pace for 1,400 yards, 60 targets, 11 touchdowns. Over the last 8 games of the season, let's take a look at his targets. 5 targets, 5 catches, 4 targets, 3 catches, 4 targets, 2 catches, 7 targets, 7 catches, 1 target, 1 catch, 1 target, 1 catch, 4 targets, 4 catches, and 6 targets, 6 catches. Towards the end of the season, they started showing that they want to get Isaiah Pacheco the ball. More involved in the receiving game, and over the down the stretch, he averaged over 20 opportunities per game with an RB5 finish in that stretch. I think I don't have it pulled up, but it's it's week 11 through 18 or 13 through 18 or something down the stretch. Rushing touchdowns by season from the Kansas City Chiefs. 2023, last season, 9. The year before, 18. The year before, 16. The year before, 13. This offense got a ton better. Last year was one of the worst we've seen the Kansas City Chiefs offense, even though they won the fucking Super Bowl. So Isaiah Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the only notable name in this backfield. I think is just a really good handcuff for fantasy. Isaiah Pacheco is going to be the bell cow. He's going to see a shit ton of work. He's going as a top 12 running back, rightfully so, because he's going to break out. He's going to have 15 to 20 carries a game. He's going to be involved in the receiving game. He's going to get all the rushing touchdowns. It's just a beautiful pick. There's just, barring injury, there's no way that this turns into a bad pick. This guy, he cannot bust. The last guy I'm going to pick is Alvin Kamara. Now, I thought about this because there's always that chance that this is the year that he takes a really big step back. But guess what? His price is already baked into his ADP as the RB17. a little bit nuts to me. So let's talk about it. Let's look at his past seasons. 2023, he finished as the RB11. In terms of points per game, he was the RB3. He missed 4 games. He almost averaged 18 fantasy points per game. So, however you want to frame it, he took a step back in the run game. He wasn't very efficient. Didn't really do shit. He's not the same player as he was, sure. But the receiving is always there, especially with dump-off Derek Carr. RB3 in points per game last season, and now he's the RB17. So, if he was being valued as the RB8 or 9, maybe I'd say, you know what, maybe he's not bust-proof because he could fall out of the top 12 running backs this season, maybe. But no, there's no fucking way he drops below RB17, guys. I'll pop it up the rest of the years. 14 points per game, 18, 25, 17, 23. His worst finish was 2022 as the RB16. That was his worst finish. Every other year besides that, in terms of points per game, he's been a top 10 running back. 70-plus receptions in 5 of the past 7 years. Only has 1 year averaging under 17 points per game. His receptions per game literally went up from 22 to 23, from 3.8 to 5.8 with dump-off Derek Carr. Outside of Bub Means in the 5th round, the Saints added nobody. All they did was lose Michael Thomas. No matter how you look at it, Alvin Kamara is the wide receiver 2 in this offense. He just is. So he can be as inefficient as he wants. I'm going to bring up Rachaad White again. He can be as inefficient as he wants in the run game. He will not drop outside of the top 17 running backs. Rachaad White was ass in the run game with his receiving work. He was the RB4. And, whatever you want to say, Alvin Kamara has still had between 600 to 900 yards in every single season of his career. I guess 694 was a career low last season. I just want to get this out of the way, too. Kendre Miller is a guy that I'm not worried about. There's a ton of Saints beat writers that are just out on Kendre Miller. He wasn't good last year, and I know he was injured. He had a good game at the end of the season against the Falcons, and now people are kind of grasping straws there, being like, he's going to break out, take the rushing game. Now, number one, even if he does, Alvin Kamara, ceiling is still there. Our floor is still there with this receiving work, even if he does. Because he'll still have 500 to 600 rushing yards. However, I don't see the Kendre Miller thing happening. Alvin Kamara is 28, not 30. I think that's worth noting. It's just, I don't think his same ceiling is there that has always been there as in top 3, top 5 running back, even though he was RB3 in points per game last year. But I think the floor is up here, and his price right now is beautiful. So that's going to round out my 5 running backs that are absolutely bust-proof. The next video will be wide receivers that are absolutely bust-proof. Leave a like and a subscribe, and a comment on whatever you want me to do in the next few videos. I'm going to be pumping this shit out like crazy. Thank you for listening.